Hello and welcome everybody. This is Grandmaster Sam Shanklin here at chess.com to bring you another video lesson. And today I would like to continue my series on games I played at the World Open. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to finish this game in one video. My guess is not. But so last time we saw I was playing poorly and I drew with Romanenko's 100 points lower than me and I completely winning position. But I managed to really mess it up. Hopefully something you guys can learn from and never repeat that error. But in this game, I finally sort of got the ball rolling. This is round 8. I had been having a pretty mediocre result, one of my, I guess probably my fourth mediocre result in a row. And I was kind of disappointed, but in round 8, I got white against Grandmaster Tsegmed Bacalun, who I believe is Mongolia's #1. He's a bit over 2,500, so I knew I had a somewhat challenging game coming up. So we'll see how it went. So g4, d5, c4, e6, knight c3. Okay, now people are mainly doing bishop e7 here, but he did knight f6. Okay, so here, after c6, often black will be playing the move bishop f5 in this position, but, and there's some strange line, bishop f5, queen f3. In this endgame, I don't know, jury's still out on it. Not particularly relevant to our game. In the game, he played bishop e7, bishop d3, and we've got a pretty standard Carlsbad Queen's Gambit. But in this game, my opponent played bishop g4, which caught me off guard. I'd never seen this move before. So I was thinking for a while and trying to come up with my best plan. And the move I came up with, or the plan I came up with, I don't think was best. But it certainly was complicated, and that's really what I was aiming for. I was looking for complications in this game. I wanted to have a decisive result. I wanted to beat this guy after, having struggling for so long. I'd drawn another, 2480 or something the night before. So I played the move queen c2. And as I expected, he played bishop h5. So his plan is to exchange the white squared bishops, which is one of the biggest plans in the Queen's Gambit Declined, which will almost invariably help black's position. So, because oftentimes that bishop's stuck on c8, behind the knight on d7, or it's on e6, where it gets attacked by knight f4. So I was thinking here, one of my first thoughts was to play the move f4, which looks very aggressive, to just say, okay, no, you're not playing bishop g6. I'm going to play h3 and g4, but yeah, I think this was maybe biting off a little bit too much. Knight g4, for example, and this e3 pawn seems to just be falling, takes, and yeah, e3 goes. That's not good news. So I played the move f3, and then he played bishop g6, and now he's to the point. I was playing castle long, and I'm ready to play e4 very, very quickly, and I wanted to just take the center from him as fast as I could. And this sort of goes back to what I was saying about putting pressure on your opponent. It's funny, the computer was saying that black is fully equal here, but I actually think black's position is kind of difficult to play. He played the move knight a6, which makes some sense. I mean, he's threatening knight b4 and forcing me to resolve some stuff. If I play a3, I'm weakening my queenside. So I captured g6 and played e4, and the computer was suggesting that after knight c7, black's position was absolutely fine. But somehow after e5, knight d7, okay, you can play knight e6 or something. I would prefer to be white here. I mean, knight f3, g4, f5, my moves seem pretty automatic, and I'm not totally sure how the computer would want to play this for black, but it was saying equal, but somehow, I don't know. I mean, I kind of like white's position. And I think that this would be a lot easier to play for white, and black would be under pressure. And indeed, my opponent decided to resolve the position right away, and he captured on e4, which gives me more of the center, and now knight g4. And here, white has a very big decision to make. Should he exchange bishops, or should he keep bishops on the board? And I think I made the right one. So I want you guys to pause your videos and see if you can figure out what to do. Alright, so I think we should keep the bishops on. After a bishop exchange, it's a little awkward defending both these squares, and I don't know, it can be kind of tricky. Queen g5 check could come, let's say queen e2. Now this would fall to knight f3, I think. And queen g5 check. And castle long, knight f3, queen e3. I don't know, looks like some exchanges are happening, and the real problem with black's position is that the white center should have some dynamic potential, but if the queen's coming off and the black rook's activating, I have a hard time believing white has much to work with here. So I played the move bishop f4, and okay, I had to be a little bit concerned about some tricks that black had, but as it turns out, none of them work. For example, g5 would be one move that I could be concerned about, because now, the bishop's attacked, and I have to stay in touch with e3, and if bishop h2, black can take his pick, or bishop d2, excuse me, black can take his pick between d4 and h2. So, however, white is a good move here, so let's see if you guys can find it. All right, so the move is queen e2, which counterattacks the knight. And I think black's definitely quite a bit worse. If the knight moves or something, I can just retreat the bishop to g3, which stays active when I'm preparing for d5 or something really quickly. And if he captures on f4, takes, he has a little bit of trouble organizing his pieces properly. I was calculating some lines here, and I couldn't really find happiness for him. Example, castles, knight f3, and he's going to lose the pawn on f4. I was calculating some queen a5 here. Knight b4 and king b1, and it seems like white's firmly in control. b5, I wanted knight e4. Takes, and now, or sorry, I didn't want knight e4, I wanted king b1. And I thought that like knight e4 was going to come, and my knight comes to g5 and f6, and I give mate somehow. So, yeah, that wasn't really a concern. Probably black should play g5 in this position, but that's definitely a concession. I can play d5 here, for example, and try to break open the center, and I think white should be better. So in the game, my opponent played bishop g5 instead, but after queen d2, takes, suddenly this knight, who looked kind of proud, is now being forced backward. So knight f3, queen c7, and black's hoping to just develop his pieces normally. White's got a big center, but if black can castle, castle's long, other rook on e8, his position seems okay. So the move I came up with here was not the best one. I should have played e5. I was concerned about knight b4. Trying to use this weakened d5 square, but really there was no reason to be concerned. After knight g5, let's say like knight d5 in here, he can't take here because of b takes c3, and I'm very much ready to drop into d6, which is a much weaker square than d5, and he can't castle long because c3 is hanging. So this would have been very good for white. But I played the move knight e5, which is kind of tricky. Now here I think black actually made a pretty serious mistake. He played the kind of natural-looking castles long. I think castling short was better. In general, this looks dangerous, but white's a little bit pinned up, and it's really important for black to get counterplay really quickly. And he's already threatening like knight d7 to exchange pieces and whatnot. So, I mean, I don't think white's attack is that dangerous just yet. But after castle's long, rook hf1, this f7 pawn is a real liability that black is going to have to live with, and it's actually very difficult. So, like, I mean, another thing is this knight on a6 has a very hard time getting into the game. So I think black actually has a very difficult position here. So he played rook he8, and then I played a very strong move, king b1. Point being that I'm hoping to, well, not so hoping, but like I thought that his main idea would be to try to play c5, but c5 is definitely failing here after like say knight b5, and then like queen b6, and I'll just play a4. He can take this, but knight c4 is just going to be devastating. Rook c1 also is pretty darn good. And that's sort of the point of having played king b1, is to not have cd4 come with check, and then like have knight c4 and rook c1 available. There's always these tactics with like knight b5 and rook c1 that he has to watch out for. Like, okay, the game continued rook e7, and then I played sort of the automatic move g4, looking to play g5, dislodge the knight, attack the f7 pawn. And one move I was considering for black here was to play rook h8. Which seems a little artificial to play rook h8 to e8 to e7 and the other rook over to h8, but I think it makes some sense. I mean, the rook's on a nice open file, pressuring this newly backward pawn and whatnot, but knight b5 is devastating now, which seems very fortunate for me. I was even hoping to play knight b5 in this position. I saw this clever trick. If queen b6, I can give this check, and then after takes knight c4. But I didn't have an answer to queen b8. I was calculating some line, rook c1, knight c7. No, I wanted some rook takes c6. But my ultimate conclusion was that this position with the rook and two knights, my center isn't very stable, and I thought that I wasn't totally sure what was going on. White is, it's a really weird material balance. I have a queen and I guess 3 pawns for a rook and 2 knights, but I wasn't very comfortable with my position. I thought that black could end up better very quickly because my pawns are unstable and they could get attacked. Maybe the computer will laugh at me there, but I'm sure black has other options as well. In any case, that's what I considered, but I think g4 is just simpler and easier. It doesn't seem like it needs all this mess. So I want to play g5, and rook h8 fails to white playing knight b5. So black's actually very hard-pressed for moves. It's hard for him to come up with a plan. Like, I have g5 coming. I was even considering playing like h4, h5 first, and then like maybe even h6 if he lets me to dislodge this knight. But like, I mean, black just doesn't have a way to improve his pieces. Like, this knight's stuck. Knight c5 I think was interesting, but in this case it's failing, I think, after some g5. If this knight moves, I give this check. King b8. And okay, I can probably just take a pawn and then take on c5, and white should be doing extremely well. And knight e6 fails, and knight takes f7. And if knight e6 in this position, I'm just going to take here, and I have too much for the queen. A lot of pieces. Luckily for me, after rook d4, queen e5, which is kind of a funny fork, I have knight e2, keeping everything protected, and, well, white should win with the rooks and the knight. So, knight c5 was a thought, and king b8 was a thought, but it's after something like this, and like g5, knight h5, queen f3, like with f7 hanging. I mean, I'm not threatening to take it yet because of rook f8, but and this knight's out of play. It seemed very pleasant for me. So my opponent took a very long think. He had maybe 40 minutes. He thought himself down to like 15, and eventually he sacrificed this exchange on d4. And we got this endgame here. Now, okay, nominally white, of course, is better. I mean, he's got an exchange ahead for just a pawn, but it's actually very tough to make this turn this into a win because his pawns are weak. His rooks aren't that great. They're pretty well restricted. He hasn't really been able to put pressure on black's position. And yeah, I think this is actually going to be very tough to convert into a win. So why don't you guys pause your videos and try to figure out the best move for white. Alright, so if you want more time, keep them paused. This is a very important move. White plays h4 right now. He's threatening g5, which will win the f7 pawn. Now, I'd figured out that black's plan was going to be to play rook e7 and then bring the knight to e5. If he can do this, like if I play, I don't know, h3, rook e7, sorry, I don't know, g5, and the knight comes to e5, I have a very hard time removing this knight. f7 will be safe then. I'm going to have a very hard time like doing anything, basically. And this other knight comes to like e6 or something. It seemed to me that black would draw the game very easily. So this move h4 prevents that, because after rook e7, I mean, if I play g5 would be a mistake. Then after knight e7, I think black draws. But I play e5. Now the point is he can't take because I play g5, and then I'll activate my rook by taking on f7. So he plays knight d7, and now I play e6. So I pitch a pawn, so he now has 2 pawns for the exchange, but I've really butchered his structure, which is going to be enormously helpful. Now, I started to sort of falter around here, but I think that white, if he plays correctly, should retain a large advantage. I think the best move is knight e4, which is kind of automatic, but I didn't play it for some reason. And, okay, I think white has very good winning chances. In particular, it restricts this knight, which is really nice. I was expecting king c7, and now I'd let's say just king c2. And I think that white is doing very well. I think that he's very likely to win this game. I mean, this knight has a hard time getting in, because if he does this, we can exchange, and now rook f4 happens, and he can't stop rook f7, exchanging a pair of rooks, and I mean, he can't play knight f6, and if he plays knight e5, I can go knight g5 with rook e4 coming, and it seems like after knight e4 and just king c2, white should be doing very well. But I was a little more anxious to make stuff happen, and I played rook f4 right away, which was a mistake. And now he plays a very strong move, knight c5. And I had seen this, and I thought that after rook f7 I was just going to win, but I'd missed king d8, which defends the rook and keeps any unwanted guests out of the 7th rank. Like after this exchange, like I can't really bring my rook in. He'll play knight f6, attack this guy, and like it should be probably holdable for black. So after knight c5, I thought for a while, and I played king c2, hoping to control this square, and maybe played b4 next. But my opponent played a5, stopping b4, good move. Played a3, and now knight f6. And I think that already here, probably black's within the realm of drawing the game. It's really all that one mistake took to let these knights get active. So I'll show the game continued. g5, check, here, check, and now I've got to be careful for this one. Knight takes c3, knight e4 check, and now knight d6. And we see what black's done. He's set up some kind of a fortress where everything's protected. This h4 pawn could drop off at any moment. And I can't really come up with a plan here. It's hard for me to actually do anything. Like, he doesn't have weaknesses. So I want you guys to take a nice long pause to think about what to do here. It's very complicated in how white should play. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that yet. I'll show you what happened. I was very concerned about the move e5. Because e5 check, he'll play e4, and then knight f5 check, and he just shoves this e-pawn down at me. I don't have a really good answer for it. So, like, for example, I was considering rook a8, trying to take the pawn, and, like, if b6, rook a7 check to trade rooks. But after e5 and, like, here and, like, check, there are just issues. Like, king here and, like, e4 takes, like, check, and, like, knight d4. I thought I might just get queened on, which would be pretty bad. But the move king c5, which seems more natural. Actually, after king c7, b6 is checkmate, which is kind of a shame. And if takes, and b6 wins the rook, and if rook a7, I'm sure there's a ton of wins, but knight e4 check and knight d2 seems the simplest. So that would be a problem. So ultimately, I played the move rook e1 with the intention of stopping e5. It would seem like knight f5 check here, takes, doesn't help because I can give this check and come into d6 and take e6. And I was pretty optimistic at that point. However, my opponent played e5 check anyway. So with that in mind, I'm going to stop this video here, and we're going to make this a two-parter. You guys are going to have this position to think about until the next one comes out. So until then, this is Sam Shanklin signing off.